Well, hey there, Trent Goodmanson here. I'm here in my studio in Idaho, and it has been a while since I've posted anything to this channel. Sorry about that. I know I've gotten a lot of great comments from you guys about my my demonstrations, plein air demonstrations. It's not as easy to do these figurative pieces while I'm holding the camera, and so I just haven't done a lot of it. And the plan is to get a nice setup with a couple cameras so that I can do some more professional looking things in the future. But anyway, that's in the plans. It'll probably take me a while. I've been quite busy just getting paintings done and out the door. But I've had some questions over the years, and actually a lot recently too, about what materials I use. And I do kind of mention my colors in most of my demonstration videos, but not always. So this one's all about that. And I thought to do it in kind of a more interesting, fun way, I will start with an unboxing. So, okay, I've got my pocket knife out, and I'm gonna turn the camera around. All right, here is a box that has just arrived, and I order all my stuff, I shouldn't say all of it, like 99% of it through Jerry's Artorama or dickblick.com. So just two of the online art supply places. And this includes two interesting things that I think are important as far as brand goes. And I'll talk about what I mean as I get into it. Hopefully it's all there. Oh wow, plenty of bubble wrap, that's nice. Okay, so, put my pocket knife away. So right away, so this is mostly titanium white in here. I use a lot of white. Most oil painters use white more than any other color. And one of them that I have been using recently, I haven't used this much in the past, although in the past 6 months I've used it almost exclusively. The reason being that the paint that I used to use, which is the La Franc and Bourgeois French color, which I loved, you can't get it in America anymore, at least it can't where I've been looking for it. So as I've been kind of researching what kind of paints are good. And one thing that I'm really particular about is that my white oil paint stays white. That it doesn't yellow easily. And a lot of people aren't aware that, or maybe you are aware, I don't know. Some people aren't aware that even if your oil paint does yellow, which kind of happens with linseed oil, if you just bring it out in the sunlight for a couple hours or in a really bright room for maybe a day or two, it'll actually lighten back up. But knowing that a lot of my paintings will be in collectors' houses, a lot of them will be out of direct light because people kind of tend to think that that's good for oil paintings to keep them out of direct light. Anyway, so the whites would have a tendency to yellow over the years with certain brands. So again, a little bit of research has gone into this. Some people have done some exhaustive studies on these. They've put different brands on little test strips, and they've measured how yellow they go over the years in a dark closet. And it's like there's some 5-year and 10-year tests out there on the internet if you want to look those up. But anyway, I found that this one got really, really high ratings. This is Grumbacher, of course, the professional kind, titanium white soft, and the soft actually got better marks than the original one. And I think the reason that is true is because it uses poppy seed and sunflower oil instead of linseed. And I've actually found that that's kind of consistent across the board with these tests, is that the linseed oil tends to yellow more than others. So I'll set that to the side. We'll dig in here a little bit more. So again, Grumbacher Professional, titanium white soft. And you never want to use zinc white, just, well, in my opinion, because it cracks. Zinc is kind of famous for cracking. And you can use it if you paint on boards like I do. So these masonite boards that are, I've oil primed them. Or rather it's an alkyd priming, which I really like, and I can talk about that in a second too. Anyway, so I've got ivory black here. I use a lot of black too in my paintings. And this is Winton, and you might be saying to yourself, what? That's a cheapo brand. It may be cheap, or rather inexpensive, but it's not a cheapo brand. I've used some very expensive brands for all my colors, and I come back to Winton. And I definitely use ivory black over any other. It has a really nice tendency to be kind of on the cool side, which I love. I can actually use it in place of blue. For example, this one, I'll turn it so you can see it right side up. It's not as obvious in this light, but I have not used blue in this. You can see right here where it kind of looks blue. That's still just ivory black and white. So some of you know that as the Zorn Pallet. Anders Zorn was famous for using that and using it masterfully. And as you look around at a lot of my finished paintings, not this one. This one actually does have a little bit of blue in it. But all these others, including that one back there, where it looks very blue, are actually used using just the ivory black and white mixture. So it's very, very pretty color that I think is a beautifully subtle way to handle blues or blue-like colors. All right, so Winton is actually a really good brand. Let me get those out of there first. Another black. Burnt sienna, another Winton. I tend to use, again, I've used other brands, expensive brands that you'd think would be far superior, but in the burnt sienna, I always go back to Winton. It's a powerful color, and cadmium yellow pale hue, another Winton one. I usually like to go with true cadmiums, and I have real cadmium pale, cadmium yellow pale, and cadmium red light, and cadmium red medium in the Winsor and Newton brand, but it's not the Winton line. It's the Artist Colors line. So it's like $50 for a tube that's not even as big as these ones. And these ones are the same size as each other here. But because cadmiums are just kind of, even though they are toxic to breathe the dust, I don't sand my paintings, and I don't spray apply it, so it's not actually that dangerous to work with. And fun fact, if you have enough zinc in your diet, your body won't easily absorb cadmiums. And you scientists out there could explain why. I know why, but I don't want to take the time to explain it. Anyway, another cadmium yellow hue. I like the light because I can always make it darker or more orange with my reds or my burnt siennas to mimic the cad yellow mediums and things. I just use so much yellow that is another burnt sienna. But I use so much yellow that I'll use it to cover a large swath of the canvas, as in this one, and then I'll go over it afterwards with the true cadmium, because cadmium is more light fast. It's just, I don't know, over the course of 1,000 years, if my paintings ever last that long, then the cadmium might possibly have a tendency to to remain a little bit more colorful, more bright. It's a truly permanent pigment. So I've got a lot of burnt sienna, is replenishing my supply of yellow, and white, of course, and then also the black. Okay, here's the other white that I've actually never tried this. This is my first time that I will be trying this one, Lucas 1862. And the reason this one scored high marks on the white test, the yellowing thing, is, and let's see if it says it on here, what it's made out of. It's all in German. So let's see if I can open it up and see what it says on the inside here. What the vehicle is. So obviously it's titanium white. Here, let me look at this not through the camera for just a second. It doesn't say on here, but I happen to know that that it's a same stuff in my priming. What's the word again? Alkyd. It's an alkyd color. Now, there's one thing about alkyd that is not my favorite, and that is that it smells a little bit strong. Let's see. Oh, this is not bad actually. Some colors, some alkyd colors are like highly toxic smelling. This one, on the other hand, smells like linseed oil. And they're maybe, I can't remember. It says it on the site when I was buying it, and also on the yellowing test. It's primarily an alkyd color, which means it actually dries more quickly, but I paint so quickly that it's all right. It's more or less in one session, and actually that's kind of a benefit to me, that it dries quickly. Alkyd is sort of famous for that. Put the lid back on this. I'm just touching it here. There's a little bit of oil here, and as I touch it, it doesn't really feel like linseed oil. It's a little bit more gooey and stretchy. You can see it being all stringy as I pull my finger away from it. But again, it doesn't have a bad smell, so I'm pleased with that so far. As I kind of squish I can tell the consistency is nice and smooth and buttery. Compare that to the Grumbacher. Grumbacher is a little bit thicker, but I have, like I said, I've used this a lot. A little bit more pasty than the other one, but it's still nice and soft. I do not use Winton white, although I did when I was a student. But I've learned over the years that there are a lot nicer whites out there. Perhaps they've changed their formulation, and maybe they've got a soft white that's better. But I still think that where I use white so much, and got a bunch more of these Lucas ones in there. Those ones are empty. Okay, so on to this next subject real quick. So I have been extremely happy with Gamblin's varnish, the Gambar gloss varnish is what I use. The reason being that it uses only this really light Gamvar, what do they call it? Gamsol. And Eco House is another company that makes a really light, hypoallergenic medium that I paint with, and it hardly smells like anything. It just smells like water. It is technically toxic to breathe, but not nearly as bad as other ones. So I paint with Gamsol, or that Eco House Neutral Thin is the name of the product, by the Eco House company. They're both about the same, but I use those exclusively as my medium. And I've got my daughter here with me. She just came to sit with me. Hi, Emmy. And, oops, sorry. Turn this around again. And yeah, I like this because it uses that medium as its medium, and it dries quickly and without a bad smell, so I can actually do it inside without worrying about it too much. I still, just for fun, not just for fun, just for health reasons, I still do it outside whenever possible, or in the greenhouse that we have. But I can paint this on a painting. This has not been varnished yet, but I don't have to wait the typical like 6 months to a year that you're really supposed to wait if you do if you use like Damar varnish, or really most any varnish. It needs to be you can't really put it on until this painting has been sitting around at least 6 months. Basically, it needs to be thoroughly dry. This, if I thin it down a little bit, I can make a nice quality retouch varnish, which allows the painting underneath to breathe and to dry thoroughly through the varnish. And also, this one is so easily removable with that very light solvent. It's not gonna, there's no danger really of it eating into the paint itself, as there is with, say, like turpentine, which is actually quite harsh on paint. Yeah, you can pop it. That's all right. So anyway, I highly recommend Gambar. There are more expensive ones out there. I haven't tried them yet. I'm kind of always experimenting with all my colors and all my products, particularly with varnish and with the gesso that I use, or gesso replacer with the ground. But this is what I've settled on for now, and I've been really happy with it. It goes on really well, and I like the fact that it's easily removable. And I have actually had to remove it on several of my paintings, even just in the past few months, where I think it's done, I varnish it, get it ready to send to a gallery, and then suddenly notice that there's something that needs to be fixed. And I can't, of course, paint on top of the varnish, but I can easily rub that little section very lightly with a rag that's soaked in the Gamsol, and it comes off easily, really easily and quickly, and it doesn't take off any of the paint in the process. All right, I'm gonna go over to my easel, or my palette rather. Show you some of the other ones I use. Permanent Alizarin Crimson. It has to be permanent, because true Alizarin Crimson is not permanent at all. It's not light fast. It shouldn't even be sold. I have some Utrecht colors on here, which, you know, as far as color quality, it's nice, but it's not my preference. I don't like how stringy and sticky it is. Some people love that. It's not my favorite though. Van Gogh, it's kind of a inexpensive, cheap color, but I love it for black. It is one of the most powerful colors I've ever used, even more so than the Winton. But for some reason I just bought more of the Winton because I already have some of this. I just sort of use it interchangeably. I don't really have a preference between the two. More Winton. I've been trying out Van Gogh Azo Red medium. This tends to mix well and still retain its nice red color, and that was given to me by a friend to try out, but in my personal opinion I still prefer to use the real cadmium, although it does, my friend was right, it definitely does mix differently. Cadmium tends to just, it's almost like it's red and yellow mixed together, where it doesn't really mix well with blue when you get it really light and thinned out. And this one tends to be more of a pure red, which is funny. So, but this is a more powerful color, and I don't like how weak that is. So I don't know. So I have both of them. I've used M. Graham as a resin oil color. I don't know. The jury's still out on that. So sunflower oil and alkyd resin. So kind of just experimenting with that. It's a little bit of a strange consistency for me. This is something that someone gave me. Hate it. This is Leonardo da Vinci paints. I hate it. I don't even know why I still have it here. Gamblin is another good one. I love it actually. I don't use it a lot, but I tried it with this cadmium lemon, and it's nice. More of that permanent alizarin crimson, but this is the more expensive one. This is not Winton, it's actually the Windsor and Newton. Honestly, I don't notice any difference in quality. I mean, I actually like this one better because it doesn't dry as quickly, and I can squeeze it out of my palette and it'll stay wet like that for a month before it'll, I mean, it might skin over a tiny bit, but I can not have to scrape it for a month. You can see the other ones that I have. Rembrandt, love Rembrandt all across the board. I have used it for all my colors. The only reason I don't use it as much now, I still order it, but it's 3 or 4 times more expensive than the same thing in Winton, and the Winton is just as good for the black and burnt sienna, and actually the blue is just fine for my needs. And here's my palette. The ones that I always use are burnt sienna, red, yellow, black, and white. And then also on my palette are the permanent alizarin crimson, ultramarine blue, and this is a phthalo green, phthalocyanine green, which in the Winton brand is, they call it, what is it called? I'll have to go over to my other stash here to remember what it's called, because I haven't used it as much lately, but I do like it. Oh yeah, it's the Viridian Hue, which is actually phthalo pigment. So that is what I use for colors. So another thing that's in this box here, and I want to talk about this. Hey, buddy. Is, no, it's not live, but it's going to go up today. The thing I have in the box is this casein paint, and I've got a whole bunch of that. I'm really excited about it because I'm using this for making frames. Oh, come on, come out. Now, casein paint, I can't do this one-handed. Oh, come on. Casein paint is literally made out of milk. It's the protein solids in milk. And you can actually make this yourself if you take skim milk and you let it. Yeah, because it has what's it called? It has a chemical in it, it has ammonia in it. So you can technically get pneumonia. Yeah, you can technically make it yourself if you let skim milk go bad and start to curdle, and then you pour off the whey, so the watery part, and leave the curds to dry, and then you grind them up, powderize them, mix them with a little bit of ammonia, and that's pretty much it. And some water, I guess, at that point. But so you can make it yourself, but why go to all that effort? I've had very little interest in making my own paint because it's already made so well by other companies that have done great at it. I've over the years used different brands, but this time I got a whole bunch of this Richardson casein raw umber because, I use it to antique these frames that I make. This is not the best example. I didn't spend as much time as I should have on this corner. But you can see that parts of it are shiny. This is more shiny than this, but this is dullest of all, and it's got this nice antique. It kind of looks like, I don't know, like dust has settled in the cracks for hundreds of years, and that's really the look I'm going for. And this is actually silver, aluminum leaf, so silver-colored aluminum leaf that I've tinted over the top of it to make it look gold. I've used shellac on that to make it like that. But yeah, so this casein paint is used to go in the corners, and I basically just kind of water it down and sponge it on with a natural sponge, and when it's dry, which is only a few minutes later, then I wipe it off with steel wool, and it stays down in the cracks. And it's just beautiful. And I've used in the past many different colors of casing, and I've pre-mixed. I've got every color that I normally use on my oil painting palette, and I'll mix up a color that's more or less like a burnt umber kind of color, or a yellow ochre type of thing. But this raw umber tends to just be a great substitute for that, so I don't have to mix the colors. It'll save me a lot of time. So yeah, that brings me to the fact that I have been making my own frames. I invested a couple $1,000s to buy this machine, which was hard to do because I wasn't so great at using it. But that's kind of the way it goes when you don't even own a machine yet. But a friend of mine, a great artist who does great frames as well, showed me how quickly he makes his frames. So I buy these moldings from a local cabinet shop, and I cut them on table saw or miter saws. I bought two saws. One is set this way all the time, and one is set this way all the time. So I'm trying to keep the angles exactly a 45-degree angle, and if I keep them stationary like that, they tend to be more accurate for longer. So I cut them, nail them together under the back sides with this V nailer. It's called an underpinner, this machine is. So it does these V-shaped nails in the corners, and boy does it make it strong. I do glue it with like a waterproof tight bond glue. But as you can see, it's got the nice rabbet cut underneath for framing. So it's not just like crown molding or something. It's actually made for framing. You can buy this online if you can't find a cabinet shop to make it for you. You can go to if you just look online for okay, I remember it. It's called Foster Planing Mill. It's in LA, California, and they make great quality stuff. It is more expensive than if you were to find a cabinet shop that can do it for you. But this is poplar wood, and it cost me $1.50 to $2 a foot. So what that means is that whereas I might spend $250 to $500 for a frame for this, for example, it's a 36 by 48. It might only cost me, when I make it myself, it'd be 4, 8, 11, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, about 18 feet times that by 2. So you can see how cheap it is, $36 for a frame. And about an hour of time goes into that. So I've been very happy with the idea of making my own frames, and plus they're all customizable. I can make them whatever color I want. Here's one that's in the process. Of course, that one's just barely, I barely puttied the corners, and I haven't sanded it yet. This has been puttied and sanded and painted, both with a red primer and a flat black. And so now I need to gild or leaf this lip here, and then use the casing paint to antique it, and then do the finishing work with the steel wool. So a lot of steps, but turns out that it's not that hard to do. All right, so a lot of paintings that are going out soon to a show. I'm just in the process of measuring them and getting frames made for them one by one. It's going to be a show in Santa Fe of my interior pieces, restaurants and things. So, and you can see here what I was using. It's a nice frame, but it doesn't tend to go as well on these things as the black does, in my opinion. So someday I'll have my couch back. All right. So hopefully that answers your questions. Those of you who are wondering about brands of paint to use, what I use is not by any means like what you should use, but you can if you want. I've been happy with them, and I've given you kind of my reasons why I like them. But I recommend just painting. Don't worry about brands as much as just worrying about the sound principles of how to make a good painting. But I do encourage you to experiment, and if you go to a craft store and run your fingers through the brush bristles, you'll probably find that you tend to like some more than others, and then once you experiment with that, you can try to find others for less expensive online. That's what I do anyway. Once I find a good brush, I kind of tend to stick with it. And I can talk about brushes forever, but I'll save that for another video. All right, this is extremely long, but hopefully helpful. Thanks for joining me. I will see you later. Happy painting. Bye.